All right, today we're pulling back the curtain on the whole world of graphic design. We're going to break down everything from the big core concepts all the way to how those ideas actually turn into the final designs you see every single day. So yeah, let's just dive right in.
And I'm willing to bet the answer is a big yes. I mean, think about it. Whether we even realize it's happening, we are all influenced by design, like constantly. You know that gut feeling you get, that immediate, like, ooh, I want that, when you see a product on a shelf? Well, that's it. That's the power of visual communication at work.
So here's our game plan. First, we're going to figure out what a brand even is. Then we'll take a look inside the designer's toolkits. After that, we'll get into the rules for actually using those tools, see how it all works with a real-world example, and then finish up with a big takeaway for you.
All right, section 1. What is a brand? We're uncovering the why behind the what. You know, before we can even begin to talk about cool logos and colors, we've got to get a handle on this foundational idea because it guides every single design choice. It's really all about figuring out the why before you even touch the what.
This quote it nails it. Simply put, branding is what other people think about you, your company, your product, or your service. A brand isn't what you say it is. It's not your logo. It's not the colors you picked. A brand is a perception. It's that gut feeling, that idea that lives inside someone else's mind. And this right here, this is probably the most important distinction to get. So you've got branding on one side. That's the big idea, right? The feeling. Then on the other side, you've got visual identity. These are the tangible clues, the logo, the colors, the fonts. They're the tools the designer uses to try and shape that big idea and influence how you feel about the brand. Okay, section 2, the designer's toolkit, the building blocks of visual communication. So if the visual identity is the set of clues, then what are those clues actually made of? Well, that brings us right to the designer's toolkit. These are the absolute fundamental building blocks for anything visual. Now, this is a huge distinction, so really lean in here. It's so important. Think about it like grammar. The elements are the what. They're the nouns of design. The principles, on the other hand, are the how. They're the verbs. They tell you how to arrange all those nouns. You absolutely cannot have one without the other. So what are these building blocks? Well, there are 4 core elements. First, you've got line. It's just the path of a moving point, but it guides your eye and carves up space. Then there's shape, which is any defined area that creates forms we can recognize. Then, of course, there's color. I mean, what a powerful tool for creating mood and grabbing your attention. And finally, texture, which gives you that feeling of what a surface is like, even on a totally flat screen. And get this, every single design you've ever laid your eyes on is just a clever mix of these 4 basic things. Okay, let's just zoom in on color for a second because it's just so important. Any color you can imagine can be broken down into 3 parts. There's hue, which is just the name of the color, red, blue, green. Then you have value, which is how light or dark that color is. And finally, saturation, which is how bright or dull it is. Here's a super easy way to remember it. Just ask these 3 questions. What color is it? That's your hue. Is it light or dark? That's the value. And is it vivid or muted? And that's your saturation. Simple. Another huge element in the toolkit is the font, or what designers call typography. And really, it all boils down to 2 big families, serif and sans serif. So serif fonts are the ones with the little decorative feet at the ends of the letters. Think Times New Roman. They feel a bit more traditional, maybe a little more formal. Sans serif fonts, on the other hand, well, sans just means without, so they don't have those feet. They're clean, they're modern. Think of something like Arial. And here's the golden rule with fonts. When in doubt, a more timeless, understated font is less likely to detract from your message. Look, it's so tempting to pick some crazy, trendy font, but trust me, those can look dated super fast. Or even worse, they can just make your message impossible to read. The goal is always clarity. A good, timeless font lets your message shine through. So, section 3, the rules of communication, or how to use the toolkit effectively. Okay, so we've got our toolkit packed with elements. Now what? How do we actually use them? This is where the principles of design come in. These are the rules of the road, the guidelines that tell us how to arrange everything to create something that's clear, effective, and, actually interesting to look at. Great design isn't just magic. It doesn't happen by accident. It follows a pretty structured process. And there are 5 main phases here, starting with orientation, which is just getting the brief, then analysis, where you really dig in and understand the problem. After that comes conceptual design, where you figure out the big why. Then design development, where you start visualizing solutions. And finally, implementation, where you actually build the thing. And hey, if you want a little trick to remember that, just think OA Creative Designer Implements. Okay, one of the most important principles you can learn is visual hierarchy. It's basically about controlling what people look at first, second, and third. How do you do it? Well, you use visual cues. You can change the size. Bigger things just feel more important, right? You can use color. A bright, high-contrast color will always draw the eye. There's position. We tend to look at things at the top or in the center first. And then there's weight. Bolder, thicker elements just stand out more. It's like being a traffic cop for the viewer's eyes. And of course, there's balance. This is another big one. It's really all about creating a sense of stability, making sure the design doesn't feel like it's going to tip over. You can have symmetrical balance, which is when everything is mirrored on both sides. That feels really formal, really traditional. Or you can have asymmetrical balance. That's where you use different elements to create balance, and that feels way more modern and dynamic. Okay, section 4. Design in the real world. We're going to take a look at this greenhouse project because, theory is great and all, but let's see how this stuff actually works in practice. So we're going to look at a quick case study for this fictional brand called Greenhouse and see how one single identity can work across a bunch of different things. We're going to look at 4 different examples here because think about it, a brand doesn't just live in one place. And the huge challenge for any designer is making sure that core identity, the colors, the fonts, that overall vibe is instantly recognizable everywhere it shows up. And here's the secret. Consistency isn't about just repeating the exact same thing over and over. It's about creating a flexible system where everything feels like it's part of the same family.
First up, you have the logo. This is ground zero. It is the absolute cornerstone of the brand's identity. And a good logo has to do a few things really well. It's got to be simple so you can remember it. It needs to be scalable so it looks just as good on a tiny app icon as it does on a massive billboard. And it has to be versatile so it works in full color or just simple black and white. It's basically the brand signature.
Okay, number 2, a poster or an ad. Now this is where all those principles we just talked about really come to life. A designer is going to use hierarchy to make that main headline just pop off the page. They'll use balance to make the whole thing feel good to look at. And of course, they'll use the brand's colors to give you that immediate greenhouse feeling, even if you just glance at it from across the street. All right, third, we move into the interactive world with a prototype for an app or a website. And here, consistency is king. Every single button, every little icon, every font choice has to perfectly match the identity we already built. The goal is that it has to feel like Greenhouse while you're tapping and swiping around. And for our 4th example, let's add some motion. In a short motion ad, you're literally bringing the brand to life. But even when you add movement and sound to the mix, those core visual elements, that logo, those colors, that specific font, they all have to stay consistent. It's all about reinforcing that same visual family we started with. All right, our final section, your design takeaway. And it really boils down to this. It's all about communication. After all of that theory, all of that practice, if you remember one thing, remember that. And that's really the heart of it all. Graphic design isn't just about making things look pretty. It's a visual language. Its purpose is to communicate. Every single choice a designer makes has a goal, whether it's to persuade you, to inform you, to identify something, or just to engage you. It is 100% strategic communication.
So, I'm going to leave you with a little challenge. The next time you're out in the world, you pick up a product, you scroll through a website, you see an ad, just pause for a second. Now that you know the basics, what's the invisible message that design is sending you? What is it trying to make you feel? You've got the decoder ring now. See what you can find.